Pineapple on pizza. And what does it have to do with Dungeons and Dragons? What's up, my nerds? It's about 8 o'clock in the morning here at Site B. It's Thursday, the 12th day of June. I know it's hard to tell it's June because I look out the window and it looks like it's October with the gray skies and the drizzle. But according to the calendar, it's June. Anyways, I don't know if any of us have been paying attention to the latest non-topic in the tabletop role-playing game controversy market, but it's Thief versus Rogue and Pineapple on Pizza. I'm not sure how the two are connected, but both the arguments started at about the same time, and you know it must be a really slow week in the tabletop role-playing game controversy community if we're arguing over Pineapple on Pizza. But really what we're arguing over is how much damage a rogue should do in combat. And I think Mike Merles started this, but it's extrapolated into, I don't even know. The problem is, at some point in time, the Thief class, which, I don't know, the name has never felt right for what the class did, became the Rogue class. But the Thief's class job, when it was originally presented, was basically your quirky skill monkey, problem solver, dungeon scout / expert treasure finder. Now, probably the problem was calling it Thief in the first place. But if you look at the original build, all the way back to AD&D or even before then, you had the huge skill matrix and all the ways to get the skill matrix even higher. An 18 dex halfling was your best thief because it got the most bonuses on the skill matrix. And then you had to pick locks, pickpocket, climb walls, detect traps, remove traps, decipher languages, read scrolls. It was this great skill monkey list of all the things this class could do. And it was up to you and your imagination to find ways to apply those skills to the situations that would have happened to you in an adventure. But at the very end was backstab, right? Now, the original Thief was very much limited to what he could use, what she could carry, what type of gear was available to her, him, them, it. They had limited use of weapons, limited use of armor, but that's because their job was not to go up and kill things. You had the fighter and the cleric, and in some cases the wizards, whose job it was to deal with the living, or in the case of clerics, not living threats, while the thief / dungeon scout / expert treasure finder's job was to deal with all the other problems. The pit traps, the climbing the walls, the sneaking ahead, all that stuff. That was the dungeon scout's job, was to scout the dungeon and find ways to apply those skills to non-dungeon related experiences, but mainly you're supposed to sneak up ahead, check for traps, look in the room to see what's in there, and then come back and tell everybody. During the fight, if you're lucky, you maybe got your backstab out once, but then you weren't supposed to be there going toe-to-toe. Your job was to provide support, whether that support be ranged or dealing with the other threats in the room while the party is fighting, sneaking ahead and grabbing the treasure, pulling people out of combat if they got downed, sneaking up and handing somebody a potion or a different weapon, and then regulated to carrying stuff because, you had the carrying capacity and you were limited to what you could carry in weapons and armor, which meant you had a bunch of empty space that you could use to carry treasure. And sure, sometimes the thief would steal from the party, and sometimes the thief would do things to get themselves in trouble, to instigate conflict. But on paper, that was the original thief's job. The primary was the skill and mini-maxing the skill matrix and finding ways to apply the skill matrix to the various situations that would befall the rogue. The secondary or even tertiary was, okay, do the damage. Do your backstab. If you're lucky, you get one. Backstab. And the backstab, I'm not even sure where that came a thing. Maybe when they were designing the class, they felt, well, it's got to have something to do combat-wise. Or maybe they were like, well, you know, assassins, snipers, these guys, they sneak up, they slit someone's throat, and then, okay, then they sneak away, you know, special forces. So we should give that to the rogue. Because otherwise they don't really have anything to do in combat. Except when you think about it, the ninja's job is not to be in direct hand-to-hand combat. If the scout is in direct conflict, probably isn't doing your job. Once that big battle breaks out, your job is to deal with other stuff on the periphery. So the main damage, man, I'm using a lot of big words today. So the main damage dealers can deal with everything else. Your wizards laying down the fireball, your clerics doing the healing and the buffing and the turning of undead, and your fighters doing the fighting. And then as the game progressed, we added more classes, and we added another quirky skill monkey class with the ranger, which D&D has never got right. And we added the monk, which was, I don't know, just sort of another hodgepodge class, which D&D never got right. And then we added the bard, which was the ultimate quirky skill monkey hodgepodge class, which D&D has never got right. And then somewhere along the way, and I don't want to blame fourth, so I could blame video games, but I'm not sure when this happened or why this happened. I have a feeling video games might have had something to do with it. The ideas of DPS, damage per second, and DOT, damage per turn, and DPS, I already said DPS, somehow migrated into the thought pattern of tabletop role-playing. And the rogue's job, about the time they stopped calling it a thief and they started calling a rogue, which again was the wrong name, which probably is the whole reason, is the name doesn't really fit what the class does on paper. Because we're not talking about how you play it. We're talking about how it's the mechanics, right? So then the rogue dungeon scout thing became more about the backstab, the sneak attack, and more different ways that the character could affect combat, and less about the thieving, the actual picking pockets, disarming traps. Many builds were more focused on doing that damage and doing it as many times as you could. And the quirky skill monkey aspect was just, okay, there. You know, especially when we got rid of the percentiles and the fact and made it that, you know, there's only the rogue had these chances to do these things and made it more skill based. Well, anybody and their dog could take ranks in pickpocket and stealth and the other stuff, and disarm traps kind of sort of went away. It just became perception, right? News object or whatever it's called now. So if even a thief, you know, if even a cleric could pick up a rank in stealth, kind of made the rogue feel like, well, everybody can do what I can do, especially with the latest incarnation of the system where everybody's sort of the same. There is no specific hole for that class to fill. So you're focusing more on damage output, DOTs, damage over time, DPS, damage per second, stuff like that. So then we got the thief who can poison people, who can apply disadvantages to people, you know, blindness, and slicing the tendons so they go slower, and stuff like that. And that leads us to the argument, well, the thief build isn't doing enough damage, so I need to mess it around with it. Because somewhere along the line, we forgot that the job of the dungeon scout is not to be involved in combat. Your job is to deal with everything else so the combatants can then deal with combat. You're the problem solver. You're the quirky skill monkey. You're the sneaky guy. You're the dungeon scout. And if you wanted to do other things, there were ways to build it around. You know, we had the prestige classes and the kits and the builds and the whatever else, specialties, whatever you want to call it. We could have the acrobat. We could have the assassin. We could have the mystic rogue, the arcane thief, which Wizards of the Coast never got right. We could have the, you know, all sorts of different ways, the scout, the sniper, to do the rogue. But basically, it seems now to break down to how much damage I can do And am I doing enough damage, or do I need to do more damage? And ways to apply damage over times and damage per seconds and disadvantages to my foes. Again, if you've gotten yourself in hand direct combat where everybody can see you, ninja, you're probably not doing the job that you're originally supposed to do. So yeah, so that leads us to the ways to make the rogue do more damage, which it's not your job. If you wanted to, at best in a fight, once the fight breaks down, your job should be either providing aid, ranged aid, dealing with stragglers who are out of the radius of the fireball, or running up and applying healing potions or pulling people out of combat. But you shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with the troll. If anything, you should be sneaking up behind the troll and pouring oil on him, so when the wizard casts his fireball, the troll is destroyed. Or if you're playing a little bit more greedy, while they're all fighting, you're sneaking ahead into the treasure room to see what's there and how much of it you're going to pocket. And we know that you guys have done that, right? Because I've done it. We all have done that. Again, I don't know when this started. I'm going to blame video games, but might have been something else. But the idea that my job now is to just do as much damage as I can and keep doing damage in a fight and adding disadvantages and adding conditions, and not, sneaky stuff. Well, anybody can sneak ahead. The ranger can sneak ahead. Frick, even the paladin can take a level and sneak. So again, I don't think that's the rogue's job. The rogue's job is to be the quirky skill monkey. You're the dungeon scout. You're the problem solver. You're the engineer. You're the face man. You're the scoundrel. Except bards can. Part of the problem is bards. Part of the problem is, well, nobody really knows what a ranger is supposed to do. So I guess it's the sneaky guy, because that's kind of in the name. Special forces, ranger, green berets, Navy SEALs, ninja, So that seems to be the controversy. So what do you think? What is the rogue's job? Does the rogue, as it's written today, do too much damage, not enough damage? Is the rogue's job to apply conditions and disadvantages to opponents and to, get involved in the scrapes when they happen? Or is your job as the dungeon scout to do all the other stuff, to solve the problems, so the fighter types and the caster types can get into the mix and do their thing without worrying about something else sneaking up on them or the room flooding or whatever? Now, I started this with saying maybe the problem was in the name. And even today, I think the problem is in the name. Because when you hear the word thief, it brings up a very specific image. But when you're thinking about a bunch of people crawling around in a dungeon together trying to survive and not get beaten up by a bunch of slime, it's like, well, what are you stealing, thief? I mean, the whole point of the word is to steal stuff and not get caught. And taking things that don't belong to you is against the law. But you're in a dungeon, you're in a cave, you're in a tomb, you're in the middle of a desert. You're not breaking any laws in the dungeon, and you're not really stealing from anybody. You're just picking up crap that was already there. So you're not really thieving. You're problem solving. You're scouting ahead. You're spotting traps and making sure they don't go off. You're a locksmith. You're a scout. You're not really a thief because you're not really stealing anything. Now, if you were like robbing banks in the city, then sure. But again, anybody can rob a bank. Anybody can be an assassin. I have a very specific set of skills. You have a very specific set of skills. And you had that awesome skill matrix in the old days, which they got rid of, which was part of the problem. Because the awesome skill matrix made it very obvious what your job was. And the point was to get the awesome skill matrix better, so your percentile chances, your skills were more successful, so you could do all these things to keep the party alive, so that when the fight broke out, they could deal with the fight, and you could sit back and go, I'm going to go rob the treasure room while you guys are fighting the dragon. If nobody cares, okay. But then we changed it to rogue, because thief had too many negative connotations. So we're going to change it to you're a rogue now. Well, that's even a worse word, because rogue is like, well, what's a rogue? There's like 10,000 different definitions for a rogue. He's a rogue. He's a rapscallion. He's just an energetic problem maker, right? Don't worry about him. He's fine. You know him. He's a rogue. He's a rapscallion. He's yeah. Again, what does that mean? What am I roguing? They called her rogue in the X-Men because she took people's powers. Oh. But the rogue term applies more to the bard than our thief. And even because the bard doesn't really bard anymore. But we're not talking about bard. We're talking about pineapple on pizza, because that's the other argument. Now, I'm not sure what the pineapple pizza argument has to do with D&D, but there's a lot of D&D people arguing about whether pepperoni belongs on pizza or not, and whether pineapple is a worthy thing to put on pizza or not. And that's, it's very diversive, the pineapple on pizza versus the no pineapple on pizza. I mean, we argue that's a much bigger argument than the rogue class. Do you put pineapple on pizza? Should pineapple be on pizza? Should pepperoni be on pizza, or should we remove it? Oh my God, that's getting pretty ugly. But I think the problem, if I could break down the problem to make sense to my messed up brain, is the name. The name thief applies a very certain thing, which that class didn't do. And when we change the name to rogue and we look at the build, well, you're not really a rogue anymore, and you're not really a quirky skill monkey anymore. Your big thing is backstab and stuff, which shouldn't be your thing. Sneak attack, well, if you're a sniper or an assassin, yeah, but that's a one-off, right? Once we get into a fight, that class's job should not be going toe-to-toe with the slime. It should be doing other stuff. Getting rid of the skill matrix was probably a mistake. I understand why they did it, because they were changing the system and making it more streamlined. And I do love skills, and I do love the idea that everybody has skills now. Shadow Dart covers it really well, which making it feel like, yeah, you can do the skills, and you're really the only one that can do the skills. And some systems still remember that your job is the skill matrix first, and the backstab is, second or third. And other systems seem to be focusing more on the DOT, the DPS, the applying conditions, you're blinding people, you're knocking people unconscious, you're slicing the Achilles tendon, you're applying poison, you're stuff like that. So that's probably how the argument started. But more importantly, I think the argument is because of the name. And because of when you got rid of the skill matrix, it kind of just felt like, well, anybody can stealth. Anybody can pick locks now. Anybody can, sneak ahead. Well, that's true. Anybody can do that, just like in real life. But the dungeon scout was supposed to do it better than everybody else, and was supposed to have the certain things that nobody else could do, because they've dedicated their life to doing that, just like the wizard. Well, nobody else could do what I do. I take a lot of hits for doing what I do, but when I do it, nobody does it better. And then the cleric comes along and goes, I actually do it better. So I would just change the name. Probably the first way to resolve it. Not that anybody's going to do this, but I'd call it Dungeon Scout or Expert. What system called it Expert? Was that True 20? They called them Expert, right? You had Martial, you had Casters, and you had Expert. And the Expert could be your I want to be the rogue type that sneaks around and disarms traps and does all that stuff. Or you could be, well, I want to be the rogue type that sneaks ahead, slices tenderloins, slices tenderloins, blinds people, adds the DOTs, adds the DPS. I want to be there doing the damage dealer, booming blade, backstab, right? The last rogue I played was a booming blade backstab rogue, and all I did was booming blade backstab. Occasionally I did thiefy stuff, but that's the build, and that was what I wanted. We knew that's what I wanted to do, so it wasn't like I was trying to be quirky skill monkey. But if I'm playing quirky skill monkey, I want to be quirky skill monkey. I don't want to be combat master because there's other people whose job it is to be combat master. So what is it you want your sneaky dude to do? What is it you want your dungeon scout to do? Maybe it should be 2 separate classes or 2 separate subclasses for the class. But again, is the name the problem? Because even 8-year-old OGGM playing OG D&D in the early 80s, late 70s, whenever I started playing, felt the name was wrong. I'm not a thief. I'm not stealing anything. I'm detecting traps. I'm picking locks. I'm sneaking around. I'm pulling people out of pits. I'm climbing walls. I'm picking locks. I mean, yeah, pickpockets on there, but I don't think I've ever used it. It was definitely the one that I focused the least amount of attention on. I was more curious, wanted to get to the point where I could read the scrolls as well, because I felt my job was to be expert treasure finder, if you prefer. Dungeon scout. I love that word. I don't remember who said it first. I want to say it was Richard Baker or maybe Solomon, but I don't know. But that really felt like what the class was doing. Dungeon scout. The ranger took care of the surface, but once we got underground and once we were in the dungeon, that was my job. Right? And of course, the thief Hobbit was the best build because of Bilbo. Bilbo did very little thieving, but he was the quirky skill monkey, and we stopped being that. We became the backstab, sneak attack, DPS monster, and then people are saying, "Well, it should be better." But no, that's not your job. That's the fighter's job. That's the wizard's job. That's the cleric's job, to deal with the combat, to do as much damage as possible in one round to the most people. That's your caster's job, to take out the big head bad guy and take all the damage. That's your fighter's job, to provide all the variety that they can. That's your cleric's job, because cleric is the most broken class in the game. Now, as for the argument that started all this, the pineapple on pizza versus no pineapple on pizza, some people love it. Some people hate it. Most people don't care. We do get very passionate about it. But the pepperoni, no pepperoni on pizza? Well, I mean, yeah, if you look at the original pizza, there was no pepperoni. Pepperoni is definitely a very American thing that we've added to it. But I love it. And I think, yeah, it's great. Some kind of meat on the pizza, the savory with the cheese, with the sauce. And let's face it, guys, there's way weirder combinations of pizza than pineapple and pepperoni. Or, I mean, people used to put anchovies on pizza, little dead fish, pickles on pizza, hamburger pizza, boba, boba, those little things that they put in the drinks, the little jelly things, they put that on pizza. People have put a lot of weird stuff on pizza. The weirdest one I've seen so far is banana bubblegum pizza. Now, I can understand some of the other weird combinations, but bubblegum on pizza, you can't swallow that, and I'm not sure you're supposed to cook it. But it's out there. And then, of course, the world's most expensive pizza, which I think is $1,500, is basically truffles and slices of gold. Because those gold flakes. What do gold flakes taste like? Nothing. Should you be eating gold flakes? Probably not. In small amounts, they've said there's no harmful side effects to eating gold. But in general, you probably shouldn't be eating base metals, even if it's thinly sliced. And then the rest of it is just truffles. So basically, I'm paying you $1,000 for a mushroom and spare change on bread. Yeah, if that's my choice, I'd rather, spend my $8 and get my pepperoni pizza. But we know it's very divisive. So what do you think? Pineapple on pizza? No pineapple on pizza. Pepperoni? No pepperoni. Is it a thief? Is it a rogue? Is it something else? Is the name the problem? Is the fact that they took the attention away from the skills and focused more on the backstabbing the problem? Does it do too much damage? Does it do not enough damage? What do you think? I think the Dungeon Scout's job should be everything but combat. And when combat breaks out, other than that initial sneak attack, if necessary, your job should be supporting the combat, dealing with stragglers, adding, sneaking up and pouring the oil on the troll so the wizard can set it on fire, keeping guard at the doors so nothing else sneaks in. Because the noise attracted wandering monsters. Or if you're playing greedy, you guys keep fighting that dragon. I'm just going to go over here and see what this. Oh, look at all these things. I'm going to take that one. I'm going to take that one. Yeah, they're still fighting. Nobody notices. I'm going to take that. Hey guys, I found the thing we were looking for. I'm going to take that. That's your job. Your job is not DPS. If you want go into combat, do a lot of DPS, do a lot of damage over time. See, it's because it's the video game. I think the video game's the problem. Backstab, run around, backstab, run around, backstab. Well, that's not a dungeon scout. That's not a thief. That's not a rogue. That's something else. That's a different class or a different build. But your job, dungeon scout, is not damage. At least that's what I think. And I'm sure there's people who disagree with me, which is fine. This is an open discussion, and I'm more than willing to listen to arguments that would make me go, okay, yeah, maybe that is what the rogue's job is. But I think, again, I'm just going to close this up with, I think the problem is, A, the name. The name has never fit what the build does. And B, the transition from TSR Dungeons & Dragons to Wizards of the Coast Dungeons & Dragons, where they got rid of the skill matrix, because the skill matrix was very obvious that getting higher on this skill matrix and being able to be better on all those things was your job, and the backstab was secondary. You even had things where you could translate languages. You were this amazing, quirky skill monkey that could do things that very few other people in the party could do, except for the cleric, because clerics can do everything. But they got rid of that. And when they got rid of it, the job kind of just felt like, well, what is my job now? If anybody can take stealth, and I guess my job is to backstab, because it's the one thing I've got that nobody else really has. So I might as well focus on that. What do you think? Anyways, all this talk about pizza has made me hungry for pizza. So have a great day. Stay warm, stay safe, stay dry, stay happy, and stay off my land. Pizza, pizza, pizza. Rogue, rogue, rogue. Thief, thief, thief. Dungeon Scout.
Roll the dice and ride the wave. Quest and dragons, the news we crave. Under neon lights we take a stand. Knights and wizards across the land.